The topic that we're inviting the exploration of today is coming home. And this it was inspired by an experience that I had last week with the presentation that Sandra Koenig did for 3PGC, where she talked about insight and inspiration. And she led a creativity exercise around what comes up for us around the word home. And I wrote something which I shared in the email newsletter today. But it has been something I actually have been contemplating for the last month or two as I'm transitioning through different travels and finding myself in this position where I'm living out of a suitcase without a permanent residence that I'm established in at the moment. I could also say homeless. And what does that mean, right? So what is the idea of home bring up for you? And what does home mean to me? And I'm going to look fresh in this moment to see, because home in the most positive sense of the word is what I think people are really longing for, a sense of belonging, a sense of safety that's associated with home. And in the context of love in action and sharing the three principles, I think that's possibly one of the most powerful things that we could share with someone, is this sense or this direction of home and where it lives. So when I think about home in this moment, it feels like that which is under everything. It feels like the ground I stand on, which sometimes I feel connected to, and sometimes I don't, because I'm giving my attention over to the thoughts in my head. But what I love about that as a metaphor, as a sense of home, is that it's there for me. That it's always there, whether I know it or not, whether I feel it or not. And that ground is actually, I find it by looking within and simply by asking, like, where is always home? It starts to point me in that direction. And what feels like home gives me the sense of it. And when I look within for those things, those images, those feelings that arise, I'm finding that which is always there for me, that place I can rest in, that place I can retreat to, but it's not even a retreat because it's always there. So that's what's coming up for me. And I would love to know what you're noticing about home, what it sparks in you. If you have a question or would like to share something. Michaela.
I'm sure there's going to be more coming up in a different vein, but when I saw your email just like a half an hour ago and read it, and what jumped up for me, probably because it's top of mind, is like, oh, a sense of home. I realize like I'm looking for a sense of home in the business community.
Mm.
Like, where do I belong? The idea of feeling like when I hear the the what it means to be family, like blood family. Okay, that's great. What it means to be your, my husband, my kids, that's cool. And in the business community, it's like I feel like I'm in two camps, actually three. My own, which is the home I would really love to bring to all of it. And there is a sense of, this is probably not where you expected this to go. Not me. I didn't know it was going to go here. Of being not accepted, of not fitting. And it's like, wow, okay, well, this is how I felt all of my life. And the happiest I am is when I'm in a space where I can just like really reveal, really express in the way that it naturally comes out. How I work or what I believe or like how I see it. And I seem to see things at times in ways that yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling like a little bit floating. Like everything the last few weeks have been kind of tossed up. And it's like, wow, yeah. Oh, it's like I'm searching for where I fit. And it's like, okay, instead, how can I just make my own space? How can I just make my own whole, my own, misshapen? Yeah, I don't know. That's just what's coming up. I just saw that I'm trying to fit and I don't fit anywhere. So it's like, I need to create my own. And I might just be there by myself, but actually I won't be.
Yeah. Are you noticing something new as you're saying this, Michaela? I'm curious.
Well, I wanted to look something up because Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie, well, Rob and I watched it for the second time on Saturday night. And I said, wait, pause. I said, I want to get my otter out and record that chunk because I need to sit with that. And it was, I will look for it, but it was about being a misfit. It's around who their music is for, that they are a bunch of misfits who shouldn't be together, are together, singing to the people in the back of the room who also are misfits and don't really belong anywhere. Something like that. I just got goosebumps. For some reason, it touched me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Michaela. There are two pieces, and I kind of want that I'm kind of hearing in what you're saying, and I want to separate them a little bit just so that we can see what's at play. And the one is what I suspect is sparking in you around this home for misfits, which actually is a space or community that you might feel called to create and or find, maybe both. That's one thing. But then with the nature of this conversation, to look inward for that sense of belonging, that sense of home that can never be found in a physical place, but yet can be found in any physical place. Because it doesn't reside in the place, it resides within. So what comes to me is to pose the question, What if you are at home no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, no matter what place you find yourself in, even if you have a feeling of not belonging, where home really lives? And what would it be like to touch that space in all the experiences? And there's something I've seen and am seeing about home, that knowing it lives inside of me doesn't mean that I never feel alone, like a misfit, like an outsider. It means that I recognize more and more, not always, but more and more, that those experiences of not fitting in are not coming from the physical place I find myself standing in, and that home is always available. And I get to create a space or community that lights me up, that is a call to those like me who would like to have a place that feels like home for them, that's resonating with the one that feels like home for me. So it's not like I have to choose between or give up on this idea of creating something in the world that inspires me, creating a home. Like, that's actually the beauty of it. It takes me back to really seeing this a couple of years ago when I moved into it was the first time I'd ever really seen this, and I had moved into a new location, and there was a screened-in porch outside, and I was doing my yoga out there, and there were lush trees because I was here in Florida, and there was a pond beyond it, and I could hear birds and see squirrels, and I just had this feeling of home for what I thought in that moment was the first time in my life, really feeling home. And with that feeling, at the same time, came this certainty that that feeling of home had nothing to do with the place I lived in, the relationship I was in, or what I was doing. That I had finally really settled home in me. And I knew that home in me. And I got to have such a beautiful experience of this external home. So it wasn't like I had to dismiss anything or downplay anything. Like, actually, I get both. And that was really cool. So I'm wondering if that sparks anything in you. And by you, I mean everyone who's listening, and or if what you hear, if there's anything you'd like to reflect on or a question you might like to ask around that. What's coming to mind for me is this. I'm going to find it, so I'm leaving the screen for a second. This E. E. Cummings poem that I linked to because I found it again yesterday. And it's one of those poems that has lines in it that come back to me in moments, and I forget where the lines came from, but somehow they're alive in me. And what's really beautiful about this poem, as in all of E. Cummings' works, is that they don't look the way poems and language is supposed to look. Like, if anyone was a misfit, it would be E. Cummings, right? And so this poem is called And the title is written in brackets with only one parenthesis in the middle, which is completely breaking all the rules. Which, I mean, if that isn't enough to love him, I don't know what is. But it's called I Carry Your Heart With Me. I carry it in. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful you are my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root and the bud of the bud and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. And to me, that is what home is. It resonates within and without. I carry home in my heart. I carry you in my heart. And it's in the stars, the sky of the sky, and the stars of the stars, and the tree of life, and I'm never without it. And yet I can see it without.
I know that place of home wherever I am. And at times when I can be more in than out, where it feels like um, there's almost like a mischievousness to it. I feel like I have this little secret or this little something that some may catch a glimpse of it if they're present. And oh, those are the ones I connect with. I just saw that. It's being got when someone gets you. Not just resonating with something you say, but something deeper, like more than just words that happen to resonate. It's, yeah. I just saw a number of things sort of fall away. Yeah. In some rules and some shoulds and of how of things that I felt, um, you know, yeah, that I couldn't apply to 3PGC because it's like they're requiring me to leave, to cut off a piece of myself and not bring that in because it may not align with their words. And it's like, wow, even the purest of community, or, like with the purest understanding of life, there can be words that are still, and it's just like, wow, that's just earth living, you know, because there has to be some boundary somewhere. And I'm going to blur them.
Oh, yeah. And how cool is that, Michaela, that I'm kind of wondering for you, and I'm asking for myself, like, what is it that's happening in me when I feel really gotten? What kind of connection is occurring when I'm not even aware of feeling gotten, but maybe the person across from me or next to me is feeling gotten? What are we doing? What are we creating? Because that is, I think when we drop into that space of home, that's always available. And, like I keep wanting to emphasize the andness of this. And we get to create a specific thing. And we can say, this is what we do in this space. And this is what I do in my space. And I can blur the lines and color outside them. And I can do whatever I want in my space and invite as many people as I want to come play and honor every other space and know that I am home here in me. Wherever I walk, wherever I choose to go, and I can choose to go and create and be and dream and say yes and say no. Because there's something that's for me, without any reason at all. And personally, this is just personally, I celebrate the blurring of the lines whenever you see fit. And self-indulgently creating whatever feels good. Yeah. And for some of us, that may be a part of the message of home that we share. That when I know I'm safe inside of myself, I feel a lot more comfortable blurring the lines and doing things differently and dancing to the beat of a different drum. And it may also inspire others to do the same. And I want to open up a space for reflection. And I see that Tom has joined us, but I'm not sure he's ready to make an appearance or if he would like to.
Well, I can talk.
Yeah.
I'm just getting out. Sorry about that. I'm just getting out of the doctor appointment. So I'm just happy to be here and join in the discussion.
Is there anything in particular you'd like to share or ask for our pondering around home, Tom?
Oh, sure. I just, the thing that really struck me was when we were talking and you mentioned the theme, I just had like an immediate hit of a good feeling. And, that's just really, in a way, what a lot of this is all about. And it doesn't matter whether you get that by hearing the word home or any of a dozen or more other words we could use. And I like how easy that feeling is to just access. And like the simplicity of it and the immediacy of it, because I mean, I felt it the moment you said the word. And so I think all of us probably have different words at different times or different things that kind of bring us in. And also the people who we share with, the same thing. And so that's kind of what I felt coming into this.
Hmm. I'm remembering now the quote as I've heard it translated of namaste. That it is, I honor the God in you and the God in me. When I am in the home, the God of me, and you are in the home, the God of you, we are one. And I wonder if that's exactly what's happened when we feel really gotten. We are in the home of this present moment, feeling seen and heard and held. And I think that the simplest way we can be that with people is to go there ourselves immediately. Being in the home in me invites you to be in the home in you, points to it. That's the essence of what the three principles is doing, no matter what imaginary boxes we might put around it and what words we might slap on top of it. There are no words for that, really.
And like in terms of being with other people and talking with other people, it's just like we never know what is going to like land or wake up something. It could be like even, I'm sure many of us have had this experience where it might even be just like an offhanded comment that we share. And the other person was like, what did you just say? I had that experience last week, and I don't know if I can really put this into words because I was, I think many of the people here know the Heartfelt Presence space, and even, are hosting on that. And I had the privilege of hearing Bob Campbell, who I hadn't met before, but he's one of the people who was around when Sid was in his early days of talking. And his wife, Krista, works with school children and wrote a book and a whole curriculum called My Guide Inside, which I'm not really familiar with, but I've seen her a few times. And I've had this thing over the past year or so, like in terms of sharing and talking to people, like, if you can talk to a 7-year-old, then you can talk to anyone. That's just kind of one of my funny stories that I keep coming back to. And I get curious about how people talk to children. Like, what do you say to children? You don't, I don't think, talk about mind, consciousness, and thought. And, even some of the concepts or the wording around inside out might not, I don't know. I don't know how that sounds to kids. If anyone on this call has talked to kids. But he was just talking, and what he said was, the thing that kids can most easily and readily identify with in terms of having a guide inside is if you just ask them about, like, do you know the difference between right and wrong? Or do you know the feeling when you are sort of tempted to do something, but then you know it's not really a good idea, or it's not right, or you know the right thing to do? And he said, like, everyone can relate to that. And then when he said that, after he said that, he said something very provocative to me, or something that woke something up in me. He said, "That's all you need to know. Like, that's it. That's all you need to know." And it really, I have to tell you, it really hit me. I had this just incredibly warm, awake feeling after he said that. And actually, it's another way of saying that home feeling that we were talking about. And so that's why, like, after I reflected on it, and it really stuck with me for a couple of days. Like, oh, and even just literally saying that's all you need to know. It's not even so much that, but the simplicity of, I feel like there's, whatever it is inside of us can be accessed, can be awakened through like infinite number of doorways. And that really landed. And if you had just said that to me 5 years ago, or maybe even 2 months ago, oh, all you need to know is the difference between right and wrong. I would not have, I don't think I would have responded to that. So there's something in this feeling of, oh, something can happen at any moment. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because it really touched me.
Mm. I even just like that statement. That's all you need to know. It's the point.
Yeah.
It brought to mind, I was spending some time with my 4-year-old niece a couple months ago, and we were out on a walk on this beautiful, I think it was still October day, and in Durango, Colorado, and the leaves were turning, and it was just it was warm in the sun, but it was cool. The breeze was a bit cool. We were walking by the river, and we were walking by these trees. And I started talking about trees with her, and somehow found myself asking if she knew how the trees help us and we help the trees. And I was talking about how we breathe out carbon dioxide and the trees take it in and they do magic with it like it's their food, and then they release oxygen and we breathe it in and we do magic with it. And then something about this captured her. So she's 4 years old and she's like, oh, and then so I can breathe out and the trees breathe it in. And it was so very beautiful because there was something that I felt, and I'm sure in some way she was feeling, of connection and oneness with these trees and beyond those trees, and how we're together, we're cooperating, we're creating. And she was 4 years old. And I didn't even have the words, like, I can't do a proper scientific explanation of what's happening there. I could look it up and maybe understand it and then explain it, but like, no, but it was just enough that it gave both of us an experience of magic and connection and having a home on this planet through the home inside of us. That's how it seems to be now. Like, of course, when I feel that home in you and in the trees, I behave differently with you naturally because we are one, we are home together, we are in each other. What a beautiful experiment to have conversations with children. And I've asked people to do this in their businesses. Like, okay, I want you to explain your business like you're talking to a 5-year-old. Can't say I'm a business coach. To be like, what? Huh? It just takes you to a very different place where all you have to know is the things that everybody knows. Maybe, you know how you see somebody on the playground and maybe they're like really trying to dig a hole in the sandbox or something, and they're not they're not getting far enough, or they look like they're having some trouble, and you go over and you help them. That's what I do. They're like, oh yeah, I know about that. I can help somebody in the sandbox. Yes, that's what I do. Oh, you help people. You've helped people make holes in the ground. Yes. And then play in them. Or like sandcastles on the beach. I don't know. There's something so clarifying about that. What if when we try to share whatever it is we're sharing, we just pretend we're talking to a 5-year-old? How would you explain home to a 5-year-old?
Well, they would probably have something to tell us about that, wouldn't they? And I love that. I love that they can do that. Um, it also reminded me of maybe some of you have heard George Pransky tell this story because he's told it several times about how he went to and got invited to a school to talk, and how he was told that ahead of time that the kids were really rambunctious and short attention spans, and otherwise known as being kids. and the first time he went, I think he tried to, I don't know what exactly he said, but he tried to explain things to them, and they just weren't having it, and they weren't listening. And he went back the second time, and he's like, well, I'm just going to talk to them and just see what they're interested in and not try to explain anything. And he just came away with the conclusion that if he was being conceptual or intellectual, they just couldn't pay attention. But if he was just with them and talking with them, things would happen, or he would put a little question in, and how different it went. And that's the same with adults too, right? I mean, if we're being intellectual or conceptual, it may not come across that well. And so it was really, I got a chance to hear George tell that story again. And, even after I heard him tell it 3 or 4 times, I still raised my hand. I was like, yeah, but what did you say? Because I was so curious about what he actually said. And he was just kind of like, oh, I don't remember. It's not the point.
I remember hearing him tell that story at one time. And what I remember of it was I got present. He said, I got present and I was just with them. And then I had their attention, like immediately. I remember seeing and hearing people talk about that with horses. Like they're very, very sensitive animals. And when we are caught up in our heads and feeling anxious or nervous or overthinking, they are doing their own thing, not paying attention, ignoring us. But the minute we get present, they feel it and there they are. They're present with us. And I think children are the same. I think we are all the same. Did you ever have somebody stand up in front of a room, a speaker? It doesn't have to be in the 3 principles world, but they're really present. And what that does for a room, like it is riveting when someone is present. Something in us just goes, yeah. Michaela says, presence begets presence. Listening begets presence. I wonder if similarly, home begets home. Coming home, being home begets coming home. which is being home. Mm. What else are you noticing? What's occurring to you that might be new? Bruce, I see a finger.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi.
My wheels are turning. And when you mentioned Durango, Colorado, your niece, in less than 2 weeks, our extended family will be up in Vail on our annual ski trek. And I live on the Front Range, so that's part of life. And it's really special to share that with young people and reflect. And I just ordered yesterday 3 copies of Coming Home by Dickon and Natasha. And I'm going to present those to my wife, to my son, and to my granddaughter. And I'll talk with them individually because I want to share the principles. And at times they get it, they just have not been exposed to the principles, but they're all very intuitive and done inner work in that. So I want to share those concepts because they came to me in the early or mid 80s. So I've been around them for quite a while and did my original work in Minneapolis with Joe Bailey, Keith Blevins, Christine Heath. And so I'm kind of revisiting all these, but anxious to share these with other people because in my retired life, really do a lot of work in the recovery world, which has been blessed to me personally for over 40 years and family-wise 50 years. And but I also work with military vets, first responders in the equine world. And you mentioned about horses, and I get that because I've taken equine guided education certification in Northern California and worked on 2 different ranches out here. And that presence is really the connection piece with them. They sense it because that's how they survive. And, I can recall just 2 instances came to mind. One was after I did a real intimate piece in a ranch nearby, and the horse was nuzzling next to me and had its head next to mine, and I was just rubbing its muzzle, and then I started talking to some of the people that were there, and then the affect of the horse changed. Like, oh, what am I, chopped liver? It was kind of like, we were one, and now there's a bigger world out there. And so I recognized it right away and altered that, and it came right back. And just a week ago, my wife and I were at one of the other ranches that serves military vets and first responders with rescue horses. And, I just went over to this one that's very social, and we were just, I was resting my head on his muzzle and just rubbing on both the cheeks at the same time. And my wife was just saying, that was the highlight of our time there because she could just sense that connection. And I get it. And that's what keeps me coming back. And, my wife knows every dog in our neighborhood because we lost our 2 about the time we retired, and we wanted to travel, so we didn't replace those. So she gets her fix in the neighborhood and knows everyone by name. She doesn't know their owners, but says, here comes so and so. And as we're driving in the car, she sees one. She points out that so and so. But yeah, that presence and connection, and as long as I'm speaking, just sharing the 3 Ps, I'm looking for insights. And you mentioned with your niece, and that's something to bring to the ski trip. how do I share the wonder and awe of three Ps with those close to me? Because I know if they had it, their perspective would be different. And that's why I ordered those books, that it might stir some dialogue. And, what I look forward to, I call them the chairlift chats. We finish a run and then we all gather together and then we go up, whether it's a 4-person or 6-person chair, we're going back up the mountain. And that's the time when we have some rich discussions, or when we stop midway down and wait for someone to catch up. There's just little time slots that pop up. And my granddaughter will be, our granddaughter will be heading off to college next year, and she'll be a softball player, and plays at, but he was a musician too. And so I'm saying to my son, spend time with Eva and tell her, what makes college click. When you're an athlete and a musician, you have to budget your time. Because I said to Eva, you're in a liberal arts, small college environment. Take some courses in spirituality, music, and art, because those are going to carry you throughout your life. So with that, I'll pass the baton. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Some beautiful imagery, both around the horses. I mean, I really see and felt you there as you were sharing about it, and the chairlift chats. I think to your question, like, how do I share this? You can rest in that intention to share and just be with them. Just like what Tom was sharing from George Pransky's story, just like be with them. Be that listening presence and see what occurs to you to say, what stories might come to you, just like the story about the horses came to you here. And I'm also curious, I don't know if you want to share now, but if you were going to share about what you've seen about coming home and what that means to you, what would you say?
To me, it would mean trust. Through recovery community, you realize that there's a power greater than yourself. And, that's certainly what, in the 3 Ps, what mind is all about. And when we get quiet, the wisdom comes. And this was kind of amplified in recent days because my wife, who's got a very great spiritual core, is an excellent budgeter, number cruncher, and dealing with economy, inflation, taxes, loss of fixed assets by devaluation. That raises anxieties about the future. And, as you go forward in life, the 3 big things are your health, your time, and your resources. And so that kind of pushed the resources button. And I think we'll be just fine, but you can start to ruminate in that and just spin and spin, and it's lions and tigers, oh my. And that's where coming home is important, to get quiet enough to trust the process and know that there is wisdom that will come to you. And, we're not going to necessarily come up with the answers in our intellect. So to me, that's coming home is kind of like getting back to the place that we never left, and whether that existed before our birth or it's in our quietest of moments, and where we'll return, it's, coming home to a place that we never left.
Mm. Do you feel that, Bruce, as you share that with us? I'm curious in yourself.
Yes, I do. But, when you live in the same household and someone gets stressed, it's kind of like, oh, you're trekking up the mountain really nicely, and you're at a good pace, but all of a sudden somebody greased the hill, and what was going at a nice rate, it's like one step forward, two steps back, and how can I ungrease the hill and get back to where I was?
Mm-hmm. I think you said it so beautifully yourself, Bruce. Come back to the home we never left. That seems to me always the first and best thing that I could do. Come back to the home I never left. All that feedback, my feelings, my thoughts, that tension is just a reminder to come home. Come on back. And from there, whatever's happening is different, looks a little different, feels a little different, maybe a lot different. I felt it when you said that, Bruce, especially that phrase, coming home to the place I never left. Yeah, I saw hearts from Tom too. That feeling points me home.
Well, that really comes from a song by John Denver. And he married a gal we went to college with. And my wife was on a ski trip in Aspen when they connected. And I was there the following year. And that's what brought me from Minnesota to Colorado, were those ski runs. And I'm still doing it. At age 75, I have 2 ski passes, and I get out there and can try to intimidate the grandchildren. I respect my son, who was a college football player in the Marine Corps, and he's a big man. I always want to ski behind him because he's like an avalanche going down the hill. He's very skilled and in control, but he's a human mass, and he's a wonder to watch because he's so graceful for a big man, because I started him at age 4 on these mountains. So that's where the words came from, a song of John Denver, because he's returning to a place that he never left, but he found that place because of our college ski club and one of our fellow schoolmates.
Wow.
So that's the Rocky Mountain High.
Bruce, those words may have come from John Denver, but the feeling you're pointing to is in you and in me. And I felt it. So whoever's words you use, they're also yours now. What a gorgeous story. And I think, by the way, Bruce, I suspect that your stories that spring to mind are going to be powerful vehicles for sharing what you've seen of home and coming home and wisdom and mind without ever using those words, possibly. Because I feel it in the way you tell your stories. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing them with us. I'm wondering if, Tom, you have any reflections to take us home. We have just a couple minutes left in our time together.
I knew you were going to do that.
You know me too well. I'm getting
Take us
predictable.
home. I feel like a tour guide and say, okay, home is this way. Let's get on the bus now. which I'm about to do. But no, I really loved what what Bruce just shared, and it's just people are like horses too, I guess. They can tell too. I remember there was this one time way before the principals were in my life where I was at an airport going away from home, but going away, and as often happens, all the travel got disrupted, and we were moving from line to line, trying to rebook, etc. And I remember just falling into this really calm space and just, waiting in line, just looking around. And I wasn't talking to anybody, but the guy who was standing in front of me, he turned around and he said, I really appreciate your calm presence right now. Like, it's really, really helping me. Thank you. And I was a little taken aback by it, but now I just reflect on that. That comes up a lot for me, knowing that it's not even in what we say, it's just who we are and how we're being. And, just like the story with the horses. So, and I think with that, look, we're home. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I'm so glad you could join us. And for you who have come to be with us here in this exploration of home, I'm very grateful for you. And I look forward to seeing you again for our next adventure. Have a beautiful day.